Missions Informational Community Meeting. We have a lot of information to share with you tonight, so this is a brief agenda for the meeting. We are currently in this housekeeping section. After that, I will step aside briefly for a welcome and introduction from the Director of the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, who's joining us tonight. Uh, then I will return to discuss the work of our agency with a focus on oil and gas regulation. Time permitting, I'd like to share some very useful public resources with you at the end of the presentation. And our plan is to prioritize a 30-minute question and answer session for our informal conversation at the end of this meeting. We want this to be an interactive meeting, but we ask that you please save your questions until the end of the presentation. We will try to get to as many of those questions as possible. So we also ask that you please be mindful of your speaking time, and we will do the same. If you have a comment or question that we don't get to tonight, please use that feedback form to provide that information to us. And for this meeting series, we plan to bring subject matter experts in for the conversation. But we ask that you please limit your conversation or your questions as best you can to the topic of the meeting, which in this case is general agency operations. I want to thank the people who provided questions in advance of tonight's meeting. We will go through a few of those at the beginning of the Q&A session. And I wanted to just highlight here some of the things you have to look forward to. We've received from several folks the question of how does this agency utilize and implement public comments? So we're looking forward to that discussion. We've also had a question of how wells qualify for plugging and abandonment. So we plan to get into that. And we even received a question on the legality of hydraulic fracturing. So we have some very interesting questions to look forward to during that Q&A session. And we hope that you will join us in the conversation. The purpose of these informational community meetings is to promote a shared understanding of agency data, forms, processes, and decisions. This is an opportunity for members of the community to ask their questions directly to subject matter experts from the agency. The questions and comments that we'll discuss tonight do not constitute formal public comments or complaints, so they're not entered into the record. Although this presentation, we will discuss how you can engage the agency in that way. As I mentioned, tonight's meeting is part of a new series hosted by the agency called Informational Community Meetings. These meetings will be held monthly with different subject matter experts presenting at each meeting. The topics of each meeting will be made available in advance on the Energy and Carbon Management Commission website, which we have down here. And these topics have been requested by members of our community. By posting the topics in advance, we hope to accommodate community members with specific informational needs, as well as those who would like to follow every meeting to learn as much as they can about the agency. So now I will turn things over to Julie Murphy, the Director of the Energy and Carbon Management Commission.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Like many of you, Stephen, Kristen, and I are also balancing tonight's meeting with family or personal requirements, which is making itself very apparent for me right now. My daughter is communicating to me about her dinner, so I might take just a minute and settle that down, but we'll see if it settled down. So I will be back for the Q&A session, and I am listening to the entirety of this meeting. It's very important to us to hold this meeting in the evening to accommodate work schedules, and we recognize that this time may not work for others. And so it's also important that we record this and make it available. I am going to take 1 minute and try to settle my daughter down. I apologize. I swear she's been quiet for the last 15 minutes.
Absolutely, Julie, not a problem.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, it's really important to us to hold this at a time that people can accommodate it and also make it available to folks who are not available at this time. We recognize that so many of the stakeholders who interact with our work or are aware of what oil and gas, deep geothermal, gas storage, it's important to you all, but you may not know who we are. And so I think that this is an important opportunity for us to engage. We also think that um, if folks are unfamiliar with who we are, it can cause some stress to folks. And you'll feel like you're obligated to learn a lot in the 30 to 60 days for a public comment period. So we hope that these meetings, because they're being recorded, continue to provide a great resource for folks. And so tonight, I want to focus on an overview of our organization. And I realize it might feel too high level for some of you who are very familiar with us, but I also hope it's an entry point for so many of you, so many of the Coloradans who are not familiar with the work at ECMC. So thank you for bearing with our family's collective opening comments. My name again is Julie Murphy, and I've served in my role as director since 2020. Prior to that, I have served in many roles at the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, or the former Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and mostly within the Department of Natural Resources of Colorado, working on Colorado's energy policy. My prior experience is in law and representing clients in different disputes. I do want to note that this year marks the Energy and Carbon Management 75th anniversary for our agency. And in that time, the amount of growth that we have experienced in the past few years has been remarkable. And for context, when I started working with the commission, I did not have children, I did not have as many gray hairs, but we also started with around 65 employees, and now we're over 200. And I think it's important to recognize what a commitment that represents from Colorado to this regulatory environment and overseeing oil and gas development. We've experienced a decade of change in the prior administration. And then in 2019, when Polis first took office, we kicked off with the mission change overhaul of our regulatory program under Senate Bill 19181. And then an additional change in 2023 from the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. And with this change, we broadened our authority from regulating only upstream oil and gas to also include geothermal, intrastate gas storage, and carbon sequestration. These changes to me exemplify the forward-thinking nature of our agency and our leadership in Colorado as our work is expanded beyond a single industry and towards a transition to a diverse energy portfolio that is beneficial and protective of Colorado's people, communities, wildlife, environment. Similarly, it houses expertise and awareness of these different projects that are occurring in the subsurface in the same organization. Along with so much of that change around the technical aspects, in the interest of implementing better engagement practices and improving transparency, 1 year ago, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission formed a new working unit, our Community Relations Unit, which we affectionately call the CREW. I want to thank them again here for all of the work they have put into engaging with community, hearing asks from community, and creating this event. The CREW houses our team of liaisons to communities across the state who are experienced and trained to help our community stakeholders navigate ECMC systems in order to ensure that community voices and concerns are elevated to the decision makers like myself and our commissioners. Their work is also to enforce and verify compliance with ECMC's community engagement requirements of energy operators, which work is grounded in ECMC and the state's commitment to environmental justice. The state of Colorado is leading the nation in this work as one of only a handful of states in the country to institutionalize environmental justice data and practices. I strongly encourage you to reach out to our environmental justice community liaisons if you have questions in the future. The CREW is a motivated team of community members led by their visionary manager, Kristen Kemp, and is encouraged to collaborate with community, stakeholders, and organizations in the work that you all do on behalf of Colorado. Tonight's meeting is the result of the CREW's collaboration with community-based organizations over the past year. This slide presents a brief timeline of the events in short. The CREW presented a community engagement plan for the agencies to community-based organizations in May of last year, inviting their input. A group, sorry, a group of 13 community-based organizations and 8 individuals provided their support, concerns, and recommendations in a letter to the commission and crew in July of that year. In August, the crew and agency leaders met with those organizations to discuss their feedback. And the agency made several commitments for adopting many of their recommendations, including this series of meetings. Personally, I'm excited to see the crew bring this resource to our community stakeholders, which is why I want to be here along with my family in this first meeting. I am very happy to report that agency management has also enthusiastically supported this idea and will collaborate with the crew and provide experts for these meetings. Community members and organizations are a major, if not the most important reason why the crew exists. And the agency is better off now that we are equipped with a team to meet communities where they are and engage and listen. I do want to specifically acknowledge the collaboration and the representation of these organizations who have been crucial to this meeting and our work on a go-forward basis. I'll take just a minute here for folks to take a look at these critical community building organizations. The agency, the Community Relations Unit, and I would like to thank the organizations who provided their input on the ECMC Community Engagement Plan for their commitment to engage with the agency on behalf of their communities. I also want to thank each of you again for taking the time to join us today, and for those of you who tune into this in the future for taking the time to listen. I will now hand this back to Stephen for hopefully a slightly less disrupted presentation. I'm excited to listen to what he has to say and to also hear from you and engage in the Q&A session at the conclusion of his presentation. Again, my gratitude to each of you for your work on behalf of Colorado, and thank you for participating tonight.
Thank you so much, Julie, for your continued service to the Department of Natural Resources and for your ongoing support of our community engagement work. My kids are plugged into a Nintendo in the next room. I am not completely immune to disruption here, but I will take the reins to discuss the agency and our work. As Julie mentioned, she'll be back along with my manager, Kristen Kemp, for our Q&A discussion at the end of the meeting. The mission of this agency is to regulate the development of oil and gas, deep geothermal resources, the sequestration of carbon dioxide, and the underground storage of natural gas in a manner that protects public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. This protective mission is defined in the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Act and directs the work that we do on behalf of the state of Colorado. Historically, our work has been focused on oversight of upstream oil and gas production in the state, which will be the focus of tonight's conversation. I will talk more about the scope of the agency's oil and gas regulation in a bit, but first I want us to understand that there are roughly 3 phases of the oil and gas industry, and different agencies regulate these different phases. The phase that the ECMC regulates is referred to as the upstream, and that generally refers to the process of getting oil and gas out of the subsurface. ECMC's authority is handed to other regulators as what is called the midstream, or when the oil and gas enters transportation to the refining process. And the third phase is referred to as the downstream, which is generally when customers are able to purchase the final commodity. Through our public rulemaking process, the agency's upstream oil and gas regulation in Colorado has been shaped by direct input from many stakeholders across the state. With our name change in 2023 came expanded regulatory oversight into deep geothermal and carbon sequestration operations. These are emerging technologies that our agency has established the first comprehensive rules for both industries in 2024. We also have some responsibilities for engagement on wind and solar projects at the request of local governments. With community interest, we may bring subject matter experts in these fields to future meetings, though none are planned at the moment because we've been asked to prioritize information about our oil and gas work. Also, I want to point out we did receive one question in advance about permitting data centers. We're unable to answer that question because we don't actually regulate that industry. But I will take my liaison duty seriously and reach out to that person and try to point you in the right direction. The work of the agency begins with rules that are established by a rulemaking process. In accordance with those rules, the agency grants permits for operations that fall under our jurisdiction. Agency staff conduct inspections of permitted operations to ensure compliance with the rules. And if noncompliance is suspected, permits and rules are enforced, which may result in penalties. The agency also investigates concerns, suspected violations, or impacts reported from the public by our complaint reporting process. Energy and Carbon Management Commission rules are the requirements for activity that falls under our mission. The QR code on this slide takes you to our rules page, which you can also access by typing in the link above. These rules are organized into 13 different topics or series. The agency doesn't actually have the authority to unilaterally make its own rules. They are created by a public rulemaking process involving our stakeholders. These rules are also updated by that public rulemaking process, which can be required by legislature or requested by any person in the state. You heard that right. Rule 529A allows any person in the state to request that the agency initiate a rulemaking proceeding. The decision of whether or not to grant that request is made by the Commission. If you have specific concerns about operations, the rules are a very important resource to have. But the agency also has community liaisons, like myself, to help community members understand the current rules and navigate agency procedures. The Energy and Carbon Management Commission is made up of agency staff and our paid commissioners. The QR code on this slide will take you to our staff directory. Agency staff conduct the regular agency operations, while our Board of Commissioners hear and decide on applications, including permit applications. When it comes to permit applications, staff conduct a thorough review of an application to ensure that it complies with agency rules. But it is ultimately the commissioners who decide whether or not to approve a permit application. This meeting series is meant for you, the community stakeholders. We want participation in these meetings to grow, so we want your help to know what forms of connection are most effective. You should see a participant poll pop up on your device now. Now, please take a minute to answer this question to the best of your ability. We'd like to know, how did you hear about tonight's meeting? Was it from the Carbon Copy ECMC newsletter? It could have been through social media or traditional media, or you could have heard directly from community-based organizations. Please take a moment here to answer this question to the best of your ability and help to inform the agency on how to effectively reach more people to attend these meetings. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I hope that you've had enough time to participate in the poll. And it looks like, cool, 62% of you have heard directly from community-based organizations. I really appreciate the support of community-based organizations and the work that they do within our communities to build the types of relationships and to notify people of important opportunities like this. So thanks to our community-based organizations across the state for the work that they do. For this next section, I'd like to zoom in on the oil and gas permitting process, including how members of the public, like yourselves, can make your voices heard in that process. Permits are comprehensive documents that describe every aspect of a proposed operation in a way that becomes enforceable by the agency. Many of the permits for new oil and gas activity in the state are received as what we call oil and gas development plans, or OGDPs. I'm familiar with this process from the community engagement perspective, but I'm not considered to be the subject matter expert on these plans. So tonight, I will give you an overview of the process focusing on community engagement, but I encourage you to come to next month's meeting when we will be hosting a subject matter expert who reviews these permits professionally. This slide offers a general overview of the timeline of the oil and gas development plan permit review process. The review of a development plan begins before the permit application is even submitted in what we call the pre-application phase. This is when an operator is considering new operations in an approximate area, so they consult with the agency and local governments to discuss permitting requirements. Depending on the proximity to communities, the agency may require what we call a community meeting during this period to allow potentially impacted people to hear about the plan and to voice their concerns directly. The operator must provide a summary of these initial meetings before they can submit their application, which initiates the agency's completeness review phase, which is the second phase on the slide here. This is the point where agency staff will review the application for compliance with our rules. This often involves going back and forth with the operating companies for a minimum of 30 days, though more involved applications can take several months. It's only after the operating company is able to demonstrate that the proposed permit is compliant with the rules that the application is considered to be complete and accepted by the agency. Once the application is deemed to be complete, it is announced and published on the ECMC website. This moment is represented on the slide by this green line with a star. Oops, sorry for that. This is the moment that information on a proposed permit application first becomes available to the general public. The comprehensive document is posted on the Commission website for review and comment from the general public. Up until this point, a proposed application may only be known by people living within 2,000 to 4,000 feet of that proposed operation. The completeness announcement also begins the formal public comment period, which may last for 30 to 60 days, depending on the distances from the proposed operations to sensitive receptors like building units. It is during this public comment period that you may attach formal public comments to the application. And again, depending on the proximity to communities, the agency may require another community meeting during this period to allow potentially impacted people to review the plan and to voice their concerns directly. During this meeting, or during the general public comment period, you'll have the opportunity to review the operator's entire proposal and comment on specific sections of it if you desire. The decision on the application is, of course, made at a commission hearing. These hearings can only take place after the public comment period has ended because public comments are incorporated into the review prior to the hearing. The hearings are often scheduled for 70 to 90 days after that completeness determination is made, so they typically fall between 0 and 30 days of the end of the public comment period. Let's see. And commissioners review those public comments that are received prior to the commission hearing. Folks are also able to give public comments orally at the hearing and to help to guide the commissioners' deliberations prior to making their decision during that hearing of whether to approve, deny, or stay a permit application. For folks that may be unfamiliar, public comments are a formal opportunity for members of the public to provide feedback, opinions, and relevant information directly to the commission. They can be provided orally during the commission hearings, or they can be written out using either our public comment portal or via email. The commissioners generally don't engage directly with oral comments that are received during the hearing, but they're able to receive the message for their consideration as they ultimately make their decision. Written comments are captured during that public comment period and attached to the packet for an individual development plan application for review by the commissioners prior to the hearing. Both types of comments provide important context and community concerns that often inform the commissioner's deliberations on whether the proposal meets the protective requirements of the agency's rules and mission. It is advantageous to get involved early in this process to express your comments or concerns to both the operating company and the agency. In addition to public comments guiding the commissioner's deliberations at a hearing, comments that are expressed to operating companies at a community meeting can often directly shape the application. There are also requirements for operating companies to capture and reply to comments and concerns expressed at community meetings as part of the application itself. So many comments that are shared early in the process actually have multiple opportunities to elicit an official response. This slide provides key milestones for public comments on a permit application with references to those rules and the website for additional information. This includes the pre-application community meeting, the completeness determination, and the announcement, the post-completeness community meeting, the public comment period, and ultimately the commission hearing, which you can find a schedule at this website below. Going beyond the public comment process, the agency also allows people living within 2,000 feet of a proposed location to participate as an affected person in the hearing. This allows the affected person to participate fully as a party in the commission hearing on an application, enabling them to present their case at a hearing by oral or documentary evidence pursuant to Rule 510E. So this goes beyond what is typically a 3-minute public comment. Folks outside of that distance may also petition to participate in this way, and their approval to do so is subject to a commission decision. We've got a few more questions for you here to inform the agency on how the public engages with public comment sessions. The QR code on this slide actually links to 10 tips for making an effective public comment, which is on the website for the Air Pollution Control Division. What we would like to know here is, have you participated in any public comment sessions before? This doesn't have to be with the agency. This could be with your school board, with your city council, any place that accepts public comments. We really want to know what people's level of experiences is with that. And there should be a second question here. We are curious to know what kind of uh, barriers folks are facing. Either things that you had to overcome in order to comment, or perhaps something that prevented you from being able to provide a public comment during a public comment session. So it looks like if that question hasn't come up, we can move past that. But we do want to know if you've participated in public comments. It looks like a majority of you have, so that's great news. For me, I've provided many public comments in my personal life. I try to be very active in my community, and they provide great opportunities to kind of get to know the decision makers around you. But every time I show up for a public comment, be it at the library board, school board, city council, I do have to work around my work schedule. I've got to find childcare sometimes, even whether or not folks provide meals at a public comment meeting can make a big difference to the folks trying to participate. So I wanted to start this sort of discussion focusing on new developments because that's what people from the community shared that they want to know about the most. And again, the meeting next month, we plan to zoom in on those oil and gas development plans and the permit review process. That provides the benefit of kind of shaping a beginning to end process for the upstream oil and gas development. Once a permit is approved and the operations begin, that operation is regulated along with all of the other ongoing operations in the state. So this section will briefly describe agency regulation and how members of the public can voice their concerns there. Zooming out for a little bit from the agency's role, there are many steps involved in the oil and gas industry, and the Energy and Carbon Management Commission is involved in state-level oversight of upstream operations. There are other agencies at the state as well as local governments that regulate the industry after the produced fluids leave an upstream production facility. The diagram on this slide is a work in progress to help people discern the different state agencies engaged at different steps from the oil well to the gas station. You can think of this slide in thirds from left to right, and you can see the expression of the upstream, this truck kind of representing midstream, and the gas station representing downstream operations. I've modified this slide to sort of limit the information to the upstream section for purposes of tonight's conversation. But you can see, in addition to the Energy and Carbon Management Commission authority, the upstream portion also includes input from the Air Pollution Control Division and local governments, as well as the Hazardous Materials and Waste Management Division. The Energy and Carbon Management Commission is not involved in regulating oil and gas at every point along the way. So when we're referring to oil and gas, we're referring to oil and gas production, be that from wells, tanks, pipelines, and other facilities associated with extracting oil and natural gas from the subsurface. In my opinion, inspections are among the most important work that we do because they enable agency staff to serve as the eyes and ears of the public, often in otherwise inaccessible areas. So inspectors are the agency staff that you'll usually see in your area. They come from our communities, they put eyes on every facility to verify compliance, and their reports are publicly available. We will have subject matter experts from our compliance unit at our informational community meeting in May to discuss the inspection process and reports. So I encourage you to attend that meeting, especially if you live in an area with a lot of activity. In addition to routine inspections, agency inspectors can also visit locations and sometimes homes in response to complaint reports that are received from the public. The QR code and link on this slide lead to our complaint reporting page. You can think of a complaint report as an investigation request. If you have a reason to suspect that oil and gas activity has impacted your area, including odors, impacted water sources, or land, this process allows you to notify the agency to look into it. Our inspectors are often the first people to follow up on a complaint request, so again, I recommend coming to the May meeting to hear more about them. Though requests can also be routed to other staff in the agency or different agencies if necessary. Complaint reports are an important service offered by our agency. They allow quick responses to concerns from the public with tangible results. So if you see something, please say something. Complaints can result in soil and water sampling, odor or noise investigation, and ultimately assessing a situation for compliance and correcting non-compliance situations. Sometimes this results in enforcement, sometimes it can lead to an external referral. This last poll will give us an idea of how closely tonight's participants live to oil and gas activity. If this is something that you haven't considered, there are two QR codes on this slide that lead to a very useful app called RBDMS Web Finder that includes a map of nearby oil and gas facilities using your location. The QR code on the left here leads to the app for Apple products, while the one on the right is for Android users. Uh, oh, this looks like the question we were looking for previously, so that's cool. Backing up to public comment a little bit, if you want to answer question number one here, this is where we want to know what sort of challenges you face to participating in public comment sessions. So I'll give a few seconds for folks to answer this question, and hopefully we'll get to the proximity question after this. Let's see, a few more seconds here. Can we see the results for question three? Ah, yes, question three. So I don't want to blaze past this. Uh, the results that we see from folks' challenges to showing up to provide public comments seem to be predominantly work schedule, of course, and lack of information. I really appreciate the ECMC team for making this meeting happen in the evening. Hopefully, that's a little more accommodating of folks' schedules, but of course, you can't capture everyone. But we do appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here today. We know that it takes resources in order to participate at this level, so thank you. Do we have question 4? Seems like we'll wait for a few minutes. Um, I recommend folks take a look at these apps. They're not agency apps. These apps come from another resource, and I'm going to get to that in a few seconds. But we really just want to get an idea of um, how close folks are living to oil and gas operations. So give it another few seconds. While we wait, I'm going to go ahead and proceed a little bit. So the remainder of this presentation is actually reserved for me to share some of the resources that we use as agency staff to conduct our work. So you may find these useful for your general information or to further inform your engagement with the work of our agency. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, RB DMS Web Finder is, in my experience, the easiest way to search for nearby oil and gas activity based on your current location. So if you can use Google Maps or Apple Maps, you can usually figure out that app. They also have an online version that you can find at wellfinder.net. But this zoomed out version of the map kind of gives you an idea of the density of activity using ECMC data. But you can actually zoom in to get to individual wells. And once you click on that, it actually accesses the ECMC database. So I can't speak highly enough about this app. It was developed from the Groundwater Protection Council, and I encourage folks to check out wellfinder.net. Of course, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission map has much more information, but this one is not mobile friendly, so I didn't provide a QR code for this one. You can find this on the Energy and Carbon Management Commission website under Data, Maps, and Resources. There are a lot of data layers on this map, so it's very useful to review the guides on the Maps page before using this. You may have noticed that I described some of the agency rules that vary based on the specifics of a location, such as the 30 or 60-day public comment period or the 2,000 to 4,000 foot radius for the pre-application phase. These rules vary based on whether or not a proposed operation is located in or near what is called a disproportionately impacted community. The disproportionately impacted community map from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment allows you to determine whether or not your community has been identified by the state as a disproportionately impacted community. So the website for the map is here. This one also is not so mobile friendly, so I recommend checking this out on a computer. Of course, sometimes it's best to go straight to the source. The top QR code on this slide leads to our agency's database query. This database includes all of the image records for permitted oil and gas facilities across the state. It contains a lot of information, including inspection records and other forms. So it's a very useful thing to access. A more user-friendly version or user-friendly data option is our Daily Activity Dashboard, or the DAD, which presents some of our more frequently accessed data in a visual format. The bottom QR code leads to this resource, although you can find both of them at ecmc.colorado.gov/data maps reports. I want to share a new resource that we're working on, the plain language form summaries. There are over 50 forms listed on the agency website, and these summaries are intended to make priority forms more understandable. We started this process with the complaint reporting forms, so you can go to this website on the QR code or type in that link and access that resource. Check back often on this website because we plan to continue to create plain language summaries for high priority forms. And I want to again thank the community-based organizations who suggested this resource during our meeting last August. Enforcement is an important topic for another day, but this QR code will lead you to the agency's enforcement guidance and penalty policy. This resource explains how the agency calculates penalties, including the classification of our rules for purposes of calculating maximum daily penalties. Again, the QR code and link on this slide will lead you to a PDF of this document. Finally, I've covered our agency complaint system earlier, but if you have a health concern, I encourage you to contact the Oil and Gas Health Information Response Program, under the Department of Public Health and Environment at their website, which is provided with this link and QR code. State agencies recognize the difficulties of determining which agencies should receive a complaint, so we often refer issues to one another based on jurisdiction. If you have a concern about oil and gas activity impacting your health, I ask that you please start with the Oil and Gas Health Information Response Program. This program includes experts in oil and gas operations, air quality measurement, exposure assessment, toxicology, and health communication. And you can see here, they have a button to allow folks to directly report their concerns on their website. So I'm going to pause for a second so we can come back to question 4. Um, we really want to know how many folks on the call, or if you're aware of oil and gas operations within 1 mile of your residence. So we give it a minute here for folks to answer this question. So please, if you participate in this poll, go ahead and answer that. I would say, looks like folks are living with or beyond 1 mile from nearby operations overwhelmingly. So that's uh, good news. There's some folks that are aware of operations within 1 mile, or some folks dealing with multiple operations within 1 mile, and some other folks that are unsure. So thank you for sharing this information. I recommend, reviewing some of the maps and resources that we've provided here, and you'll be able to get a better understanding of what's going on in your area. But thank you for joining us. So that wraps things up for me. This slide here provides links, a bunch of them. So you can find a link to the agency's website here on the left. Our agency newsletter is called Carbon Copy. So you can find a QR code that leads to that on the top here of the slide on the right side. There are links in the middle if you prefer to type those in. And we encourage you to follow the agency in these spaces, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, to receive notifications and announcements directly from the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. So with that, we've made it to our question and answer session. For the remainder of the meeting, Julie, Kristen, and myself are here to answer your questions about agency operations. We want to start the Q&A session with some of the questions that were received in advance. And again, we encourage folks to submit their questions with registration. This allows us more time to seek answers from subject matter experts who may not be scheduled to attend the meetings. So if Julie's ready, I'll go ahead and ask you to take this first question, which we've received from several folks who really want to know how the Energy and Carbon Management Commission utilizes public comments. So, Julie, are you available?
Great. Thank you. And thank you for reviewing so much information, Stephen. I think that you covered this well in the meat of the presentation around how public comments are used. Written public comments come in and are included in in the applications that move forward to commissioner review. Whether those are either received orally or in written format, they go into the commissioner's information and consideration. I think, in addition to that, comments received at the community meetings hosted by ECMC, the operator, or the local government expressing concerns are also captured. And operators are required to address these comments, and that is something that our team is monitoring and paying attention to. And in addition, as staff is reviewing public comments, we are also looking to see where are places where people see gaps between whether regulatory requirements have been met.
Thank you, Julie. Let's see. We'll come to the second question that we received in advance. Someone asked, what are the qualifications to place wells on the plug and abandon list? So this could include several different areas of the regulation, including orphan wells, marginal wells, or general wells. I've included a lot of information on this slide, and I tend to read off of the slide, so I hope that you bear with me here. But orphan sites are assigned to the orphan well program by the commission. It happens mostly when no owner or operator can be found, or if the well owner or operator is proven unwilling or unable to plug and abandon the well. And there's a little bit of jargon on this slide. I apologize for that. We reference plug and abandon as P and A. Surface owners are also able to request for orphan sites to be designated for this orphan well program. And again, the decision to put wells on that list is ultimately made by the commission. I also spoke with the subject matter expert on this. They pointed out that the second bullet point, when the owner or operator of the well is unwilling or unable to P&A the well, there's a lot more involved in that process. It often involves folks going through bankruptcy and things. It's a serious commitment, not just somebody shirking the responsibility. Marginal wells are very exciting. We have state and federal grants, programs that are administered by the Energy and Carbon Management Commission to encourage operators to plug and abandon marginal wells as a means of sort of reducing rogue emissions and sort of reducing the liability associated with those wells. So there is a marginal well program page on our website that describes these grant opportunities. Basically, it functions as a reimbursement for folks to perform the work, and then they can have some of their expenses reimbursed in return. And our general population of wells, um, these are referencing Energy and Carbon Management Commission rules that are specific. So we have what are called mechanical integrity tests, which is an assessment of the integrity of a well. Wells that do not pass those mechanical integrity tests have to either be repaired or plugged and abandoned within 6 months. For those of you who like to follow along with the rules, I've got the rule references here. So that's 417F. What we call offset wells. These are wells that exist in an area within 1,500 feet of a proposed well bore. So typically a horizontal well is coming into town. We want to make sure that the wells that are in proximity to that well bore are protective of the subsurface. The wells have to be assessed as offset wells, and if they don't meet our isolation or integrity requirements, they are required to be addressed. That can be either through repair or plug and abandonment, and that falls under Rule 308. Inactive wells, these have to be plugged within 6 months unless they're brought back into service or they have financial assurance, so bonding associated with inactive wells. That falls under Rule 434. And what we call out of service wells actually do exist on a plugging list. And there are specific timeframes prescribed for abandoning those wells. That's also outlined under Rule 434. So that's question two. We'll move on to question three and hand it back to Julie.
Great. Thank you all, and thank you for that detail. I do want to acknowledge that we are trying really hard to not get too caught up in jargon, which I think Stephen has noted a couple of times. And so I just want to acknowledge that some of the answer to this question may feel jargon heavy, but I think the precision in this case makes sense. And so I think at the outset, when we talk about hydraulic fracturing, it's important to understand the overarching framework of the Energy and Carbon Management Commission, in that we regulate the industry as guided by our statutory authority. And so the first place I look for questions like this is to our act. And so I think that within the ambit of the act, there is an expectation um, around what completion activities can occur, of which hydraulic fracturing is one of them. And so the next step for us at the ECMC is to then look at, within this framework, what do we need to continue to regulate? And in this space, we've provided information about our rules around hydraulic fracturing and how we define it, what we think that it is, and also some important additional regulations around what chemicals we have banned from use in hydraulic fracturing, what disclosures we require related to it, given the importance of this conversation to community. And also, this is a very broad statement that we could get into in the future if there's more information requested about this, and it's important, is really the engineering requirements that are necessary to isolate groundwater from the oil and gas production activities, including hydraulic fracturing. I know that's a very high level answer. This is a conversation that probably warrants more than 2 minutes. And if that's something that's valuable to community, we'll come back to it.
Thank you, Julie. Let's see. At this time, we had planned to pause to see if there were any questions from folks in the Spanish language channel. If there are none, I think this is a good opportunity to sort of open up the conversation. If folks are interested in having a question in response to the content, please raise your hand and we can hopefully start talking with folks. Let's see. So it looks like we've got a hand raised. I see Natasha Leger at the top of the list.
Actually, Steve, may I? Do you
Please
hear me?
do.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, I I am looking at chat and trying to see faces. Before we invite Natasha, Miss Leger, can I try to address some of the questions that have come through chat? I didn't track
Yes.
the order, but I think we have enough time, so maybe
Yes, definitely.
I'll go first.
Thank you.
Um, so sorry, we're answering in real time, guys. So let us get our ducks in a row.
Gonna jump ahead to the feedback slide just so folks can have something there to look through while we're answering questions. Go ahead, Kristen.
so we received a question in the Q&A about how many of ECMC's 200 and so employees are on the enforcement team in particular. And glad to answer that with this link. If you give me 1 second. So I'll on the contact us page that I just put in the chat is a link to ECMC's organizational chart, like our if you're not familiar with an org chart, like the structure of our employees. And this is updated every couple weeks, so it's quite accurate on the website. And then I am literally just scrolling and looking. There are 11 folks on the enforcement team, and they report to our Deputy Director of Operations, who reports to Julie. So I think that's that question. There was another question in the chat about the marginal well program and where fees or where the funding of that program comes from. And I'm answering on the fly, and Julie, please correct me, but the marginal plugging program is funded by operator fees. It is not funded by taxpayer dollars. So I hope that that answers that question. And I can also, there's lots more information about that program. I will also find the link to that.
If I can add one piece to that, on
Please.
balance, yes, the majority of, or the long-term implications of our marginal well program were developed in legislation passed in 2024. And so that long-term funding mechanism is really driven by a fee on industry. That said, one of the components of the program initially was an EPA grant under the Climate Pollution CPRG. I'm missing my acronym here, I'm sorry, but an EPA funded 12 million to kick it off, but our long-term program is both. So that ostensibly is taxpayer funded, but at the federal level, not at the state level. So with that clarification, absolutely, Kristen, you're on it.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I even wrote a press release about that. And then can I catch up in the chat if Miss Leger wants to ask her question? Let me see. Oh, good. It worked. Someone else did it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Natasha.
Oh, okay, excellent. Thank you again for hosting this first community meeting and the series coming up, and for acknowledging all the groups that have been involved in all of this. I wanted to go back to the public comments section and issue, and I had two questions. Um, so one is, public comment can be provided through the website and the portal, through the public viewer, but then also through the docket. And we have found that the public comments reflected in the docket are not necessarily the same public comments reflected in the public viewer, and was wondering how that gets reconciled and how those comments are actually ultimately considered. Do they all go into one big pool of comments for commissioners to review? And then I'll follow up with my second question after that.
Thank you. I will try to take a first cut at this, and of course, really welcome input from other folks on this call. We have a lot of media dedicated to public comment. We recognize there's lots of need for it, there's lots of opportunity for it, and we're trying to integrate it in as many places as we can, which at times I think may create its own confusion, but the really dedication is to getting public comments in. So we can take public comments on the OGDPs themselves through, related to the filing of the OGDP. We can take public comments through the docket, as you noted, through kind of the more of the e-docket or e-filing process. And then there's also the opportunity to submit public comments to the commission in advance through our web page. And then that can be written, or you can sign up to give an oral public comment. So that's kind of really four different opportunities. And again, the goal is to get information to us at the staff level. It helps us understand what concerns community has, what we should be paying attention to. Um, at in terms of the docket itself, it provides an additional opportunity for both the hearings team, the hearing officers, and also staff to take a look at it. And then the public comment submitted through the website in advance of the hearing and signing up for public comment, that really goes directly to commissioners. All of these filter up to the commission for it to understand perspectives from community members in different formats. The earlier in the process, which I think that Steve noted, provides more opportunity for staff to also take a look at it and be aware of that concern as it's reviewing the application. And I also want to note that I skipped over a really key and important part of public comment, and that is through the community meetings. I'm still getting used to our new process, but want to highlight the importance of that direct dialogue, both with our liaisons, local governments if they're participating, and also the operator themselves who's responsible to respond. So I think that I hope that that helps answer to some degree the different places where public comment can come in for the same process, and the different places where it can be considered. On balance, all of that goes to the commission for its consideration as it's weighing the decision of whether a particular application meets the expectations of ECMC's rules.
Thank you for that. And I guess and I can appreciate the different sources and pathways to public comment. I guess one of the things behind my question was also perhaps some increased transparency, because if at least in our experience, and things may have changed most recently, but if you're in the public viewer, you may see maybe 10 comments, and if you're in the docket, you may see another five comments. So at least from a transparency perspective from the public, it's not depending on which way you're viewing these comments, they're not equal, they're not the same. So if there's a way to kind of reconcile that so that I guess the public record looks consistent, that would be a recommendation there.
Thank you, Natasha. I think that's something that we should take back and probably explore as part of our ongoing engagement about how best to listen, frankly. And I'm confident Stephen's taking notes to think about that as well.
And then my last comment on the public comment piece was so 2A comments are reviewed before the director's recommendation. And so if you could discuss how those public comments are utilized in the director's recommendation, because what was discussed in the presentation were public comments that come after the director's recommendation, and then just how the commissioners utilize that. So if you could help explain the different, I guess, processes between staff reviewing and responding to public comment, and then the commissioners reviewing and responding to comment and utilizing it in the decision-making process.
Go ahead, Stephen, if you want to jump in.
Sure. And thank you, Natasha. I'm happy to continue to have this conversation. I think you point to a very important sort of potential discrepancy there that we can try to resolve. But speaking from the staff side, specifically as the community liaison, um, I'm working primarily with public comments that are received from the community meeting side. So that's the pre-application community meeting as well as the post-completeness community meeting. The From my position, those public comments do inform our portion of the director's recommendation, uh, not directly as the comments themselves, but the role of the community liaison is to provide an assessment of the operator's community engagement efforts in that director's recommendation. So ultimately, what we want to capture from this one position on staff is an assessment of um, whether the operator is receptive or responsive to the public comments in general. We also review the summaries that are provided for both of those community meetings, um, and that involves ensuring that the comments are captured accurately from community members. And the operators have a specific requirement then for the post-completeness community meeting to provide a written response to comments that concern public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. So that identifies specific areas where if comments are received, the operator has to provide a written response in addition to staff input on the director recommendation. But I can really only speak to that portion of staff involvement. So, Kristen or Julie, I don't know if you want to take it from there.
I might pile. I mean, that was wonderful. Thank you, Steve. And Natasha, I heard you asking specifically about the comments we received during the 2A and how those inform the director's recommendation. And I'll pause our thorough response for next month's community meeting because we'll be having this whole session devoted to the permit application process. And so we'll be sure to address that straight away in the content of that meeting.
Thank you for that.
I have a few more questions from the chat that I can try to address. And thanks for rolling with us. We want to be as responsive as possible to questions and, doing it on the fly. So thanks in advance too for submitting some questions in advance. One person asked in response to our conversation about orphaned wells, the distinction between orphaned wells and orphaned locations, and the orphan well program, which I will get a link to that, also includes locations, so wells and locations. And then another person, thank you, asked about equipment at a specific location. And so I wrote to you offline, but I just wanted to share with everyone listening that if you're just like driving in your neighborhood or down a county road or whatever, and you have a question about a particular location, that's exactly what the community relations team is here for. So you can contact us and we will figure it out together. We can help identify what that location is through our map server and then determine what that equipment is or isn't doing and all of that. I think I wrote to that person directly, but I wanted to say that out loud to everyone. Um, we got another question about I'll just keep going if that's okay. We received another question, thank you, about the length of time ECMC takes to respond to a complaint. Thank you for that question. And again, Steve touched on our complaints program. It's a really critical component of our community engagement, right? So anyone from the community can submit a complaint and then it will trigger ECMC to do an investigation and an inspection, either desktop or on site. The length of time to respond to the complaint is, I'm nearly certain, always under 48 hours for the initial response. That's the responsibility of our team. That's the initial contact, right? Under 48 hours. The length of time to do the inspection and close out the complaint can truly vary. We strive for them to be closed out and resolved to the complainant's complaint as timely as possible. And also, I should note, and I think Steve already said this, that our ability to do inspections is rooted in rule, right? And so if the inspection finds that no rule has been violated, we will close out the complaint and notify the complainant. And a few more questions have come through. If I can take a minute to look through them, please. We're just popcorning and glad to be able to answer these in real time. One participant asked about the cause of the Bishop Well release. The root cause analysis was presented at a public hearing, and so I will post a link to that. Yes, thank you. And Steve, I think the remaining questions we wouldn't be able to answer in real time here, so we'll have to follow up with folks individually, and we commit to doing that.
Great. That was incredible, Kristen. Thank you so much. We also have a couple more folks with their hands raised. We could
Sorry,
take
that's covered.
some live questions here. Kristen, are you able to elevate folks to unmute?
Well,
Looks like Edward. Thank you for joining us. What is your question?
Thank you. Given the number of wells in the state of Colorado, it just strikes me that 11 on your enforcement staff is pretty minimal. Is that something you're looking to improve, or do you need a legislative initiative behind that? Again, it just seems pretty minimal to cover the ground you have to cover.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah. If I can jump in, and sorry, the rest of my family just showed up, so the background noise might increase. I think that's a really important question, Edward. And I think that what's also important is to know that enforcement is a group effort, right? We have many other folks deployed in the field, whether it's our compliance inspectors, our our environmental inspectors, our reclamation inspectors. And so that is kind of what it builds up to. But I think that the resources question, it continues to be really important. And I think the other piece that's important to keep in mind is that on balance, we have a declining number of oil and gas wells in Colorado. We had the peak number of wells at roughly 57,000 in kind of that 2018 timeframe, and we're dropping now. And so we've been monitoring this. We've not reduced our field capacity, and in fact, we've increased it. in recognition that we continue to have expectations of the oil and gas sector that need to be met. So I hope that helps. I think that, understanding our staffing and how these processes integrate to implement the act and the rules could be an important future topic as well. So thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Julie. That was excellent. Kristen, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I wanted to say there was also a question in the Q&A about produced water, and that could be a topic for a whole nother one of these community meetings. So just wanted to say that out loud.
Thank you. I agree. Yeah, we are still working with subject matter experts within the agency to identify good times to bring in folks on specific topics. As I mentioned, a lot of topics were identified in our early meetings discussing this series, but we are happy to be flexible and definitely want to be able to be responsive to what folks want to hear about. I see that we have one more hand raised. This person used their initials, so HE. Can we elevate them and hear their question?
Hello, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Heather Emer, and I'm one of the South Shore residents that backs up directly to the Lowry Branch. My family and I relocated here from out of state for my husband's work during the summer of 2023. And at that time, we had no idea that oil and gas sites were being approved behind our new home. Not a whisper from the home builder, nor from our realtors. And it wasn't something that we thought to look for moving into this beautiful master community. It seems crazy to even have to think about something like that. And in early February of this year, we started hearing a mechanical humming noise at night that we hadn't heard before. At first, we went all around the house trying to figure out where it was coming from and if something wasn't working correctly, but then we realized it was coming from outside. We started asking neighbors, and they too were hearing it. And since mid-February, I have submitted 4 noise complaints to ECMC, 2 of which have already been closed out and dismissed with less than satisfactory reasons. You see, I didn't list the proper site. Silly me. We have heard that humming noise every night since early February with varying degrees of volume, but always loud enough to wake us up. And I've had to buy white noise machines and ear coverings so that I can get some semblance of sleep. But I have to tell you, I haven't slept a solid night all the way through since it began 5 weeks ago now. And I'm using so many things to try to drown out that noise that I'm terrified I won't hear my 3 children call out to me if they need me at night, or that I won't hear our smoke detectors or our house alarm if they go off. And it's a terrible choice to have to make as a parent each night, whether to get some sleep or to keep my family safe. And with wildfire season starting earlier this year, this choice, it causes immense anxiety in our household. And I know that you believe that the current regulations are enough, stricter than other states even. However, I've been living with the reality of your regulations for the past 5 weeks, and I'm here to tell you that they are not. They are not enough. Not with the distance from our homes. I'm one of those effective party status people. And not with the current requirements. And if you all had been living with this humming for weeks like we have and losing sleep, I know that you would agree with us that they need to be stricter, especially at night when people are trying to sleep. And I'm happy to welcome all of you, all 200 of you, or however many there are, into our home to hear it for yourselves. Please, I'm asking you to modify these current regulations you have that you believe in, because they're just not enough. They're not enough to protect this community from health risk, and we are already experiencing those health risks. I'm worn down, I'm exhausted, and I'm barely functioning most days. This should be your red flag moment if you haven't had it already, because this is not just research being presented to you anymore. It's real now and it's happening. We are living it, and you are the ones that hold the power to make it right again. So I really hope you think about that, and I hope that it prompts you to look into it and change it. And I thank you for your time tonight and your consideration. There are a lot of us now that are living this every single day. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
Ms.
for
Heather. Oh,
sharing. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Heather. And I'll get with you offline too to talk about the status of your complaints.
Thank you so much for joining us and for elevating your voice. I mean, that's really what we want to have in these meetings is an opportunity just to talk with folks. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Okay, we have another hand from Ryan. We're getting close to the end of time, but I think we have time for another question. If we can elevate Ryan. Oh, looks like there you
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I live in Weld County, and around me there are at least dozens, if not more, wells, and at least 80% of them I've never seen move. Um, is there a process or a plan for the state to remove all of these wells that no longer operate? And the plug-in abandonment, does that include removal of the pump jack and equipment?
I'll try to take a high level start at this answer, Ryan. It's not going to be perfect. I think that, I want to harken back to the comment of if there are concerns about a specific location, engaging our community liaison team to talk about the specifics is a good place to start. On balance, there are a number of regulatory pieces that are in place that are driving the plugging and abandonment of wells across the Denver-Julesburg Basin, which underlies most of Weld County, especially as it relates to some of the historic vertical wells. And that plugging program is driven by a number of different pieces, both regulatory and operational from operators as well. The long-term goal is that in Colorado is that operators are responsible for plugging their own wells in accordance with ECMC's regulatory requirements, and that extends from plugging the well through mediating the site and reclaiming the location. So I think on balance, the answer is yes. And I think getting into the specifics of a particular location or locations is something that probably requires more specific analysis. And I think that our team is here to help navigate those questions.
So for new wells or new, I don't remember what the term was, but for the new development plans, is there a stipulation in there that requires the operator to have a removal plan or a decommissioning plan to remove their equipment after the new site is no longer operating?
To some degree. So there are a couple of different ways that we approach historic well bores. What I'll focus on now are the rules related to wells that are related to or that may be impacted by proposed new development. We have offset well bore requirements to protect the integrity of the formation, the groundwater, and the subsurface. And so as part of a proposed new development plan, there are often related wells that are either plugged out or mitigated. This gets into a really technical conversation, so I'm trying to keep it a high level and acknowledge that this could probably, again, be its own presentation to talk about either the life cycle of the well or what provisions are in place as we're looking at kind of older vertical wells that are continuing, that may not be producing or maybe in the process of being mitigated. So again, this is a complex topic. Colorado has also instituted an out of service well program where operators have designated wells that they intend to plug in a period of time. And that's another component of where we are looking at holding operators responsible for plugging their own wells. And again, there's lots more on this topic and I'm trying to respect time as well. So happy to schedule time to follow up in more detail if that would be helpful for the community.
And then I was supposed to do a 10-minute and 5-minute marker, and I failed to. I'm so sorry, guys, but we are nearly at time. I'll close out with a question that came through the chat. And this is such a great example of why these meetings are helpful. Our enforcement staff, the team of 11, follow through with fines and penalties when an operator is alleged to be non-compliant with rule. There are several dozen compliance specialists and environmental protection specialists who are the ones doing inspections, either desktop or in the field. So I wanted to address that question and clarify that. And again, the powers that be at Zoom will log all of these questions. And so our community relations team will be able to respond and follow up either by posting the questions publicly with answers on our webpage or following up with you directly if it needed a more direct response. That would require, if you want a direct response, for you to include your email, which is completely voluntary. But in order for us to follow up, we would need your phone number or email, please. And with that, can I turn it over to Steve?
Definitely, Kristen. Thank you so much for that. We may or may not get cut off by Zoom, but I wanted to take some time and thank you all sincerely for joining us for tonight's meeting. This meeting is sort of an experiment. This new series is something that we're very excited to be accessible to the communities in this way. I want to promote on the slide here. We've got, of course, the website, informational-community-meetings, which you can find on ecmc.colorado.gov. Our upcoming topics, as we mentioned, next month we will talk with permitters involved with reviewing the oil and gas development plans. So I recommend folks coming back to hear directly from subject matter experts who review these plans professionally. In May, we will talk to our inspectors, covering inspections and incident reports. So again, really excited for that meeting. And in June, we will have our cumulative impacts team presenting on the cumulative impacts annual report and give us an opportunity to sort of discuss data trends observed in the 2025 data. On the right side here, one more QR code for you to get back to that feedback form, which you can also find at the bit.ly link shown above. And we want these community meetings to grow. So, I would like to ask folks to sort of challenge yourselves and try to bring two more friends to the next one. Hopefully, we can promote some growth in that way and really build this into a responsive resource for the people of Colorado. But thank you all again for your time. This has been a really important meeting, and I hope that you have a good night.